Hi everyone. I thought I'd show you just a short video. It's really about how you can design your own patterns. Nothing too complicated, but how the idea of what a design wall is. And I know it sounds a bit like, ooh, that's a bit scary and sounds a bit too arty. But all it means really is having something that you can look at while you're playing around with how your blocks are going to look. So I'm a very visual learner, so I always need something that I'm looking at flat as opposed to looking down at. Now, for me, this process works whether or not I'm following someone else's pattern or I'm using blocks or borders or whatever. I like to lay the pieces out before I've sewn them together, and even if I'm following someone else's pattern where I've already got the dimensions, I find that looking at something definitely helps me put it together. Now this is my design wall, and if I just angle it up a little bit, you can see across the top I've got these ringed holes, and they just sit on top of nails in the wall. Nothing very technical about that at all. Now this is a Fons and Porter design wall. It's quite big. If I scan down, you can see it goes all the way down to the floor. And there's one side, and if I move out of the way, there's the other side. So it's a good size. It works for me. Now it's also got grid lines on. It's also got lots of thread stuck to it because I use it an awful lot. And it's got some diagonal lines in if you need to play with those. And the surface of it, it's a bit like fuzzy felt, where it's got just like a raised, almost like a brushed cotton effect, and the back of it is plastic, so you can hear it crinkling. So when I'm not using it, I can take it down, I can fold it up. I used to be able to take it to classes when those days start again, but basically this lives up on the wall all the time, and it just helps me so that when I'm sitting at my machine, I'm actually looking back at the design wall to see what I'm doing. So what I'm doing at the moment, this looks very higgledy-piggledy, is I've got to make 2 baby quilts. So one is for a baby that's already here, and one is due in a couple of weeks. So I just thought, well, I'm just going to play with something, and I came up with the idea of fish. I actually don't know where it came from. So I've got my notepad, and I just started sketching things out, and I thought half square triangles, I'm sure I can make a tropically sort of fish. And then I started thinking, okay, that's the size I want it to be, what size does it need to start at? And I just played around. It's as simple as that. There's nothing very technical about it. Now I know some people use computer programs for designing their quilts, and that's fantastic. Graph paper works really well if you've got access to graph paper. I was just playing around in a notebook. So what I decided to do is make half square triangles using some fabrics and just decide where they were going to go. So if I start with this is just 2 squares of fabric that are going to become a half square triangle. And all I do is fold one in half and lay it, so that's what it would look like when it's going to be fade, but obviously it's not sewn together. And then I would lay it on the design wall. Now because this is folded fabric, I've got to stick a pin in just to hold it in place. And I would move around all the pieces until I come up with an idea and think, yeah, that's going to work. And then all the outside pieces, so you see they're not sewn together at the moment. Some pieces are sewn together, they're in. And then I just lay them on, and so I'm building up what will eventually become the block. So the one at the end, that one, is pretty much together of how it's going to go, but it's still not all sewn together. It's still just at this stage. So at the moment there's just that row is joined together. Now what I find works as well, if I decide at this stage how I'm going to construct the whole block. So rather than just adding bits on and this square will go there, I'm looking at it deconstructed, which really helps when it's at this stage, and thinking, right, that is going to be a row. So if you look at this block, those three pieces are going to be the top row. This part is going to be the middle row, like this, and this is going to be the bottom row, and then the three rows join together. So think back to even things like 9 patch blocks, where we do 3, 3, 3. I'm using that same technique to make a block, because we've got to have something that's constructed together, otherwise we've got to make the whole row. So I've now got a block, and I know what that's going to look like. So the next stage then is make all the blocks that are going to be in this quilt. Now this is going to be like a tummy time mat. It's not going to be a great big quilt. So I'm probably only going to use 3 fish in each one. So it's going to be rectangular and it's going to be longer rather than wider. But I can still decide how I'm going to move them along. So what I'm going to do next is assemble all of these blocks, and then I'll show you the next stage, because at the moment I haven't decided how it's going to look. So you're going to be part of my process as I move into the next stage. So I'll get back to sewing.